Hi, everybody. Welcome to Quokka's webinar, Take the Guesswork Out of Mobile App Testing. We're going to cover scenarios that are different. We'll even talk about covering mobile app testing across distributed teams and all different kinds of things. Some housekeeping first. This webinar is being recorded, so we will have a video to share with you all when the webinar is finished. And probably most important, as you're all coming in here, there is a button for Q&A. So as we go through things, if you want to just jot down your questions in the Q&A section, at the end of the webinar, we'll save a few minutes and address some of the questions that you all submit. So please go ahead and find the Q&A button and use that for questions as you like. This webinar is about 30 minutes, so we'll just jump right in and get started. So my name is Ilya Dreitzer. I'm the VP of Solutions Engineering here at Quokka. What that means is I work with our sales teams all the way through customers, meaning we are the team that demonstrates the product in a very first meeting, and we're the team that does the implementation, and we're the team that provides your support. So we really pride ourselves on working with our customers, really partnering with everyone to help you get the most out of our solution and make sure that our solution is actually solving your problems. And Rodell Valoy, Rodell, you've been here for way longer than I have. In fact, Rodell was the one that basically trained me when I joined a few years ago. If you can give a short intro about yourself, that would be great. And then we'll
Yep.
jump into the agenda.
Yep, no worries. So my name is Rodell, and I've been at Quokka, formerly CryptoWire, for quite a while, and working as a product manager for the mobile application security testing tool. So what that means is whenever Ilya hears about new features or any sort of ideas that might help a customer out, anything like that, he's talks to me, and then we get that prioritized and put into the roadmap. So always great to kind of hear from everybody and trying to make the product as helpful and as inobtrusive as possible to get you on your way when you're adding mobile security, especially with developed apps across distributed teams, which we'll talk about shortly here.
Yeah, thanks, Rodell. And I think you're downplaying your role and your experience a little bit, right? You've been at Quokka, you've seen the evolution of this product, and certainly you and I have worked together on getting some of these customer requests into the features. So I think there's no one better qualified to talk about the impact of some of these features and how they really solve, our customer problems. And that's what we're going to do today. So we're really going to cover three different scenarios, as you see in the slide, right? The first scenario is when your mobile app is developed by a third party, could be a company, could be a contractor, but we'll talk about some of the unique challenges and some of the things to watch out for and how we can help ensure the success of that mobile app, whether it's for internal use or going out into the App Store or the Play Store for, for your customers. And the second thing we'll talk about is when your mobile app is developed internally, but you have distributed teams. We see this fairly often with some of our customers where maybe, it's a large company and so they have dev teams in the US, they have dev teams in Europe, they have dev teams in Asia. And, everything goes through a central security team, but the development is done using different tools, using different methods, using different third-party SDKs, across time zones and what that really looks like and how we can help in that scenario. And the last thing we'll cover is when your mobile app really is developed internally and you utilize all these different tools and approaches. We call out RASP, which is anti-tampering kind of runtime protection, right? We call out pen testing, which in many industries is required, certainly in healthcare and in various government, financial, et cetera. But it's always implemented differently. And there's other technologies that are useful along the way. And so we'll talk a little bit about how we play in that space and how you can get the most out of each of these technologies. So to launch into the first thing, let's talk about the scenario where your app is developed by. When I say third party in this case, it's not about the actual company or individual that's writing the code. What it really means is as a central tools team or security team, you don't have direct access to that pipeline. You are not able to dictate what tools they're using. You're not able to monitor what kinds of automated checks or manual checks are being done. You're essentially handed an app that you then put your company's logo on it and you either distribute it internally or externally. So it could be some government contractors are writing it, but they don't give you direct access into that pipeline, or it could be that you are getting a marketing company to create some kind of branded app for you, let's say for a regional event maybe, or for some core functionality. Whatever the case may be, the key is that you don't have direct view into what whoever is writing the app is really doing. So how do you ensure that that app is secure, and what kinds of risks should you look for? Rodell, what are you seeing? What do you think we have in terms of platform features that kind of map to this scenario?
Yeah, so this, and as you said, this is a more and more kind of common scenario that we're seeing out there, and it ranges from small items that your organization might not be comfortable with. Maybe you have some strict policies on permissions, to even the wider range of major security issues. For example, containing hard-coded credentials, and that being an app that has your organization's name on it with credentials included in the app for anyone to download and use. So I'll go ahead and share an example of some of these risks here that we're finding. We have this Cam Scanner PDF scanner app. And again, depending on your insight into the development pipeline, you may or may not be comfortable with items like which exact countries it contacts, but including we've seen some big ones like again these hard-coded credentials where we're seeing inclusion in a production app that can be downloaded by any of your users. So when we're looking at these third-party development uh, groups, you really want to make sure that they're telling you everything's a-okay, everything's secure and meets your specifications, meets all your compliance. But having another tool that helps you check not just your static analysis, but also your dynamic analysis, how it's behaving during runtime. You're looking at some of the different network connections out there as well, so that you can see whether or not you have different tools there. And excuse me, the map here is a little bit strange today on my PC, but you can tell really quickly whether or not you're seeing these connections out. So having another set of eyes and just guarantee that your applications are being covered, I think tends to be more and more important, especially as you get more hands off on your applications.
And Rodell, the key thing here is you're showing us an app that we pulled right out of the App Store, right? So this really is analogous to that. So what I see with our customers is scenarios where they're literally given a binary and they're either told, this is the binary you should push to the App Store, or the third party actually pushes it to the App Store, even though the logo on it, once again, is the company's, right? So what you're really showing us here is the fact that our platform can scan an App Store app, an encrypted app, whatever protections happen to be in that app, we can still look at it and tell you whether it's contacting some risky nations, or we can look at it and tell you whether it has, memory protections disabled, like it shows on the screen here, or we could tell you which other countries it's contacting. We can tell you whether there's any hard-coded credentials in there. So as a customer of that third party, whatever assurances they're giving you, this is how you kind of trust but verify, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And as you mentioned, when you go through and you talk with these third-party apps, again, it runs the whole gamut of personally, you do want to look for those big security issues, but for your organization, you might not want microphone enabled, and that might be something that is a stickler with your user base, your customer base. So any of these risks, it's good to have another set of eyes, like you said, just to verify and make sure that everything is a-okay, especially if your brand is on the line there.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So the trust but verify moniker really applies here, because certainly when using a third party, contractually they're obligated to give you certain assurances, but this is how you can verify those assurances, because with this platform you can actually scan the finished product and make sure that it actually checks the boxes or meets the requirements that you've laid out for your contractors or for your third party. And that's when a truly a third party does this and you have no control over it at all. But there are other times where we see an app could be developed by an internal team, but that team could be distributed. We have customers that have, half their development is in the US and half is in Japan, for example, and they have both markets, right? Or we have customers where maybe the central security team is split between, say, I don't know, Malaysia and the US, right? But the teams that are doing the development could be in India, they could be in, they could be anywhere. So, what challenges are there when it comes to kind of putting all of it on the same consistent plane? And how does the platform help with that, Rodel?
That's a great question. And I like that word you picked there, consistent. It's ensuring that there is a consistent set of standards, a consistent set of regulations that you're adhering to, uh, despite having these distributed development teams. So in some cases, like you said, we can see that it's maybe the same app but different languages, or different dev teams in different areas, or maybe the same company in different apps. And another great thing that you can see here with the Mast is just kind of comparing across your different set of apps. So we have here two weather apps. They should be relatively the same, but even just going through, you can kind of start seeing again, there's different levels of risks associated. And if you have a weather app that's being put out in, both North America and Asia, they should generally be pretty similar, aside from some translations here. But you can see a couple of different issues here that are highlighted on one, but not the other, as we kind of scroll through here. Uh, and some pretty big ones actually on this one here, leaking data, known severe vulnerabilities, and then permissions as well is another great one. Uh, One of these, for example, is asking for a course and fine. This one's adding background location. So again, you're trying to make sure that there's some consistency, especially when you look at risks, but even permissions. What are being asked of your users? Are you aware of all the permissions that are being required for your app to function on a device? And then, of course, if there's any sort of severe vulnerabilities or SDKs that might have any issues, you want to make sure that those are covered as well. I think consistency is a great word to use when you're talking about these distributed teams.
Yeah, and this is a really good set of issues in this particular example where, like you said, Rodell, these apps should be fairly similar, but actually there's a lot of differences. So when you look at the weather app on the left, it actually contains a severe vulnerability, like you're showing on the screen, right? So that is something that they've chosen to use a certain third-party library that has that vulnerability, whereas the other app didn't. So we've definitely heard from our customers where if they have multiple apps being developed across regions, one of the main things they want to know is how can they ensure that all the third-party libraries are approved by corporate, or they're approved by some kind of security team audit, and they actually understand who's using what. And these days with AI, everybody's worried about using some AI, and that usually is a third-party library thing, right? So essentially being able to provide some consistency around which third-party libraries we're using and find out why these teams chose completely different libraries, one of which has these vulnerabilities, is very important. How hard is it for us to, provide that information to the users?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when you're looking through these apps and you're doing these comparisons, this information is available. And I think traditionally you would be going through and you would be looking at every single individual report, and you'd be going from app to app. Having a view like this that kind of summarizes it to show you everything all at once is great. And then for our libraries loaded here, you can this is really what hits the crux of the software bill of materials SBOM matter, where you can see the different loading here. And I can pull up the individual apps here to show you the SBOM if you give me just a moment here. And I'm gonna have to pause my
While you
share.
do that,
Yep.
I'll just highlight the other piece here, right? So there's the SBOM piece, which frankly is even more important these days. A lot of regulations are being written, not just in the US, but internationally around, companies being able to show a bill of materials for their apps, especially if it's, say, a healthcare app or a financial app. So we definitely are interested in that. The other thing that you can see from this screen is an app that's connecting to foreign countries. Well, again, if you have international teams, then certainly that makes sense. But then there are apps that communicate with high risk locations. And one of the things we see is, high risk locations is, of course, defined differently depending on what country you're in. But governments, police forces, regulated industries, they definitely look at that. And so, whatever country you're in, if you are a banking app and you're talking to countries that are on the, don't do business with list in your country, then that's going to be a problem. And so you can expect that to happen when you're, dealing with international teams. So consistency is important because you need to show that, for each country that's being handled correctly. But the bill of materials, of course, is also very important. So
Yep.
would
And
love
so
to see
for
that.
Yep, the weather forecast here, you can see here we're looking at different apps that are being included. So as we're going through, we're checking again, and this is another one. This is the sort of trust but verify. You might have a software bill of materials submitted to you as part of the static scans and the different checks that you're using. But as we're scanning these apps that they're on the store as well, you're able to make sure that not only are the libraries that they say are being included are included, but if there's any sort of risky dependency libraries, as your developer might use a library that uses a library itself. So being able to have another fallback list to show you all of these libraries that are included that have these associated vulnerabilities that we're seeing from, the NVD, the OSV, different sources here for vulnerability disclosures, you're able to make those decisions a little bit faster. And so again, you can see it here on the other weather app, the SBOM, and this time I don't have it checked for vulnerabilities, but you can see we have high confidence that they've included this vulnerability and this version. And if you wanted to get further into the details here, we do also offer the SBOM report in the Cyclone DX industry format. So if you're
Yeah,
interested in
that's
that, those are also available.
Yeah, and so the significance again from the point of view of a practitioner using this information, the biggest difference is there are a lot of tools that are being used by various developers, and again, if it's a third-party developer, it's even less in your control. But the fact is, they're all using tools, and there's lots of tools that will generate an SBOM. But something you just said, Rodell, is really important to point out that when you have access to the source code and you're essentially creating a listing of everything that you're pulling in, you only have visibility into what you have source for or what your source is pulling in. But when you scan the binary, and that's the big difference between binary analysis, which is what we're doing, compared to static code analysis, which the developers are doing. The biggest difference is when you scan the binary, you are really seeing everything that's in there. And what's in there, as you said, Rodell, could come from third parties, meaning I include a library, but what I don't realize is that library actually has a bunch of code from another library and no one bothered to update it and it has a vulnerability. And I think that's what we're seeing with this weather app. So that's really important. And when you're getting an app developed by a third party, or if it's a different team, then it's really important to do that kind of checking using the binary analysis and to get that consistency across your different developer teams, whether the third party or internal. But when you're actually leveraging your own internal teams, and now we're talking DevSecOps, right? You have the pipeline, it's your team, you're able to, look at what tooling they're using, you're able to request that certain things run at certain times during the development effort, then it's even better, right? Because then you have an ability to plug this in and do some of this testing. Now, the tests that we're showing you here, where we take an app from the App Store and analyze it, that's a full binary analysis. It takes about an hour, plus or minus, maybe an hour and a half max. So it's not something that a developer would run every time they make a line of code change, but certainly it's a great way to check things, when the app is finished or when you have something that's ready to be tested. But when you're talking about your own internal development environment, now you have the ability to run things more frequently, more quickly, and you can also put some of this, to use inside the development process itself. So tell us about, what can we do from a platform point of view to support that? and how do we fit in with some of these other tools, Rodell?
Yeah, great question. So, as you said, when we're looking at your developed your mobile application, you're utilizing these tools, you're utilizing, you have pen tests running, you're using RASP. Well, there's a few different ideas here where we want to spend a little bit less time and try to make sure that we're covering a lot of these common weaknesses. So when we're looking at pen testing, having something like MAST in your development cycle does help quite a bit. You're able to go through and make sure that you're taking care of all of these more obvious weaknesses, more obvious issues before the pen test, saving a little bit of time and money there. And then as far as RASP goes, we do have good RASP detection. We're checking to make sure that your apps are protected. We're checking to make sure that they have them enabled and obfuscating their code properly. But it does help to also have testing before the inclusion of RASP to make sure that you're finding and fixing anything early in your development cycle. So
For sure.
with MAST, one of the key focuses here is your inclusion in your CI/CD pipeline. So we have that with a few different options. We have some built-out integrations like our Azure DevOps plugins, or we have our fully featured REST API. And then that way you can put flags where after your early builds, um, right before your user acceptance testing, before you launch it on the store, you can automatically, when the binary is created, send it off to MAST. You don't have to do a manual submit. You don't have to take any more time, but you're getting that scan, you're getting that protection. And in most cases, before you're really at risk of anything, and again, you're able to test in these other scenarios where maybe it's pre-RASP, maybe you're pre-production configuration. So if you have different settings or different um, uh, any network configurations for your production apps, you're able to test the entire lifecycle of the app. And then, of course, as you saw earlier, test while it's on the store. So those are a few good ways to make sure that you're fully covering your application from the beginning of development cycle to the end.
Thanks. And you
Oops.
raised actually go if you go back to the previous slide because I think you raised three things that are worth covering. I know we only have a couple
Yep.
minutes before we get into the Q&A, but
Apologies.
there's three things that you hit on that I think are worth kind of stressing. So the first one is you and I heard from our customers that they need this feature where instead of running an hour and a half full binary analysis, can we have some quick check that we can add still on the binary, but not take an hour and a half. So we can do this more frequently. So what have we added to the platform to do that?
Yep. And that's a great point. So, uh, a very recent addition for our developer audience is the introduction of a light scan. So this is an early scan. It's a static, lightweight analysis meant to give your developers a very quick scan, a very quick coverage early on in the life cycle so that you're not holding up any sort of builds, you're not holding up any development pipelines, but they're still getting feedback. That way, uh, you can run your light scan early and then as you get further and further on your build process, maybe right before your release, you can run a full scan. You're including the big heavy hitter engines, you're including your dynamic analysis to give you the more full picture, but you're making sure that you're kind of helping the time management as you go through because
Yeah.
having that full analysis right at the start might not make a lot of sense if you know you're going to be changing some things. You're going to be waiting on the builds. So again, just trying to help enable our developers as we're going through the process and really giving them the information they need at the time.
Yeah, and that is a really exciting feature. So I did want to stress that in this webinar, and we will be covering this for some of our existing customers in more detail. But that really kind of fits in between step number two and step number three, more in step number two, because there's binary analysis, which means we're scanning not just your code, but also all the third-party code that's in there. And then there's dynamic analysis, which is like you said, Rodell, you want to do that later when everything is kind of stabilized and you want to make sure that nothing can be unpinned, and have a security risk that nothing's talking to, bad actor countries or locations or, block domains. So those are two big differences. But this is still a static scan that is very quick, but it's on the whole binary. So it's still different than what you would do with normal dev tools, right? So that's the added value there. And then of course, the other thing that's very exciting that we want to talk about is, we RASP is a requirement, obfuscating the code is a requirement. We see that a lot in both government and finance. So a lot of banks will come in and say, oh, we have all these protections. We've added anti-tampering, we've added jailbreak detection. Our app will not even start on a jailbroken device, obfuscation. But inevitably, there's a team in that bank whose job is to verify that that stuff was implemented correctly. And so we're getting a lot of requests like, can your tool help us? Because today we're running 5 different tools, we're running a bunch of open source stuff and scripts that we huddle together in order to, be able to verify that, yeah, the anti-tampering works, the jailbreak detection works, but our platform does that in a single flow. So it's not an extra thing. It's not 3 other tools you have to run. It basically runs as part of that single scan and gives you that validation. So yeah, it's important to include these anti-tampering and other protections that a lot of finance apps and other apps will include, but you want to validate that they're working correctly and they're actually protecting you. And you also want to find out if there's any gaps, right? Because you might have all that protection and still, a tool like ours can unpin some connection. And now what that means is you basically have access to what should be encrypted and you have direct access to, the unencrypted version, right? So that's very bad. And that's something that you can potentially protect with some of these other tools, which they're great at doing, but you have to configure them correctly. So we have a few minutes left for Q&A. If there's any questions that anyone has, please put in here. But just to summarize, we've talked about these 3 different scenarios, whether you have completely third-party developed tools, apps, or you have internal teams, but they're distributed all over the world potentially, or you have just an internal team and, how you can really leverage some of these different tools like RASP and pen testing and of course masked mobile app security testing together. So that's what we covered. Now, the question that I'm seeing is primarily around the how do you actually integrate this tooling into your CI/CD platform? So tell a little bit about that, Rodell.
Yeah, of course. So I mentioned this briefly at the top here, but we have a couple different options. So we do have some integrations already built out, right? So Azure DevOps, Jenkins, GitHub Actions, all of those we have built out, and you can pull those from the stores and plug that straight into your development pipeline if that's what you're using. If you're using another system, if you're using another set, or you want more fine-grained control, we do also have a fully featured REST API. So you can, in your development pipeline, insert a custom build script, a custom build step, I should say, with our REST API featured there. So that way, at your build step where you have that compiled binary, you can then send it off for submission to MAST, whether it's early on and you might take advantage of the new light scan, or you're using it for the heavier scan. And then again, that'll automatically send that off. So you don't have to go through the effort of, all right, let's see if the developers can send me their binary, and then I have to make sure that I submit it on time and then check. That'll all happen automatically.
Thanks. And actually, that answers the other question that just came in, which is, can you integrate with other third-party tools? That's exactly what Rodell just answered. But I'll say from customer experience, there's lots of tools out there, and they're also used differently. So like one of our customers is using Jira, which is normally used as a ticketing tool, but they're using it to actually launch analysis. So they create a ticket in order to analyze a certain app because it's developed by a third party in their case. So we could really customize our platform to fit the needs. And we do have a CS team, a customer success team, where we provide a dedicated technical account manager to our customers where we can have that kind of conversation and say, hey, what kinds of tools are you using? Let's talk about what you would like ideally for this process to look like. And then we basically write the scripts to integrate this technology into whatever workflow the customer wants. And we've done that for Jira, we've done that for ServiceNow, we've done that for various, GitHub, GitLab, et cetera, as you said, Rodell. So it's really customizable. And the key is we always focus on answering our customers' questions and sort of, giving them the tools that they need to achieve their business objectives. which is ultimately securing or ensuring that the apps are protected and secured. That's what we do at Quokka. So thanks everybody for your time. As mentioned, we'll send out this recording to everyone. Thank you, Radel, for the presentation and for answering these folks' fine questions.
And thank you very much,
So,
Ilya.
yeah, take care, everybody.
Take care.